to 6 million. But we never heard that the other consequence was that they threatened to kill Nancy.
Breaking news alerts lit up every screen in America. Ticker tape. News vans. A family's face plastered across every major network. 75 days. That's how long Nancy Guthrie had been missing. 75 days of candlelight vigils. 75 days of tearful press conferences. 75 days of the public assuming the worst: a random abduction, a cartel, a crime of opportunity. They were wrong. Because what federal investigators quietly assembled behind closed doors was not a story about a random predator. This was something far colder. Far closer to home. This was a blueprint meticulously engineered by the very people who stood at podiums weeping for cameras. Here is what the FBI now believes with near certainty: Nancy Guthrie was not taken by strangers. She was delivered. The primary targets of the federal investigation are her own daughter, Annie Guthrie, and Annie's husband, Tomaso Chioni. Two people with access to every detail of Nancy's life. Two people who knew exactly where she slept, when she was alone, and how to make the house go dark. And the ransom? It wasn't symbolic. Demands escalated to a staggering $6 million, wired in cryptocurrency, routed through shadow accounts, designed to vanish without a trace. But nothing vanishes completely. Not from the FBI's reach. To understand how this unraveled, you need to go back to one specific night. February 1, 2026. The Catalina Foothills. A neighborhood of multi-million-dollar estates where gates, cameras, and private security guards are the norm. A neighborhood where someone would need intimate, insider knowledge just to know which house to approach, let alone how to disable it. At 1:44 a.m., a critical phone call was placed. This was not a call from a neighbor. Not a wrong number. FBI analysts, reviewing tower logs in the days that followed, identified this call as what they now internally describe as the kill signal, the moment the operation went live. In seconds of that call ending, the home's entire security grid went offline. No cameras. No motion sensors. No panic alerts. Now here's where modern cell technology became the prosecution's best friend. Investigators didn't rely on call records alone. They deployed cell tower triangulation, cross-referencing signal pings from 3 towers simultaneously to pinpoint the exact GPS coordinates of the device that made that call. The coordinates matched Tomaso Chioni's vehicle. Exactly. To within meters. At 1:47 a.m., 3 minutes after the kill signal, surveillance footage from a neighboring property captured a single masked figure moving through the outer perimeter of the Guthrie estate. The movement was surgical. No hesitation at junctions. No pausing to read the layout. Whoever this was walked through that property the way you walk through your own home in the dark. Because for them, it essentially was. Now we arrive at the piece of evidence no one in this case could have predicted. The evidence that didn't require a single witness. The evidence that kept recording when every camera had already gone dark. Nancy Guthrie has a cardiac pacemaker, a small implanted device that regulates her heart rhythm and logs data on a rolling basis. Biometric data. Real-time physiological data. Data that, under normal circumstances, would only ever be reviewed by a cardiologist. But on the night of February 1, that device became the most important piece of evidence in a federal kidnapping investigation. At 1:47 a.m., the exact moment the masked figure breached the home, Nancy's pacemaker recorded a massive, sudden spike in heart rate. The kind of spike that only occurs during one physiological state, absolute terror. The device had witnessed the crime. In binary code. Without blinking. What followed was a clinical record of something no family member, no journalist, no jury should ever have to hear read aloud. For the next 41 minutes, Nancy Guthrie's heart rate remained in a range consistent with active physical struggle. The pacemaker logged her fighting. For nearly 3/4 of an hour. Inside her own home. And then, at exactly 2:28 a.m., the data stream went silent. Not because she died. But because she was moved beyond the range of her home's medical data synchronization network. The moment she crossed the threshold of that door and entered the getaway vehicle, the device lost its connection. And that timestamp, 2:28 a.m., became, in the words of one FBI analyst, the most precise abduction timestamp we have ever had in a case of this nature. No video. No eyewitness. But the heart remembers everything. Every crime this calculated has a motive this desperate. Tomaso Chioni's public image was built on prosperity. The cars. The vacations. The social media presence dripping in manufactured success. But underneath that carefully curated surface was a financial architecture that was already on fire. Federal investigators uncovered a pattern of embezzlement, hidden liabilities, and what prosecutors describe as illegal shadow loans, off-book financial arrangements that were accelerating toward total collapse. Chioni was not a wealthy man teetering on the edge. He was already falling. He just hadn't told anyone yet. Anyone except Nancy. Nancy Guthrie, by virtue of her background, her financial literacy, and her proximity to her son-in-law's business dealings, had accidentally come into possession of information that could dismantle both their lives. She wasn't just a witness. She was a terminal witness, the kind whose testimony, delivered to the Department of Justice, would be the end of everything. So they decided to monetize the problem instead of eliminating it. A $6 million ransom. Paid in Bitcoin. Because they believed, as so many criminals before them have believed, that a 34-character wallet address was a mask that no federal agency could remove. They were catastrophically wrong. The FBI Cyber Division executed what can only be described as a masterclass in digital forensics. Rather than freezing the wallet, which would alert the suspects, they did something far more elegant. They introduced a microscopic $152 transaction into the ransom wallet. A financial tracking device. A digital die pack. When Tomaso moved the funds, when he finally felt safe enough to cash out, that $152 moved with every Satoshi he transferred. And when those funds reached a centralized exchange, the exchange's mandatory KYC protocol, Know Your Customer, demanded biometric verification and government-issued ID. Tomaso Chioni's face. His documents. His identity. All captured. All transmitted. All logged. He had walked directly into a trap built from $152 and federal patience. Annie Guthrie gave a performance. She stood before cameras with hollow eyes and trembling hands. She pleaded. She begged. She sobbed through press statements calling for her mother's safe return, offering her own personal reward, thanking law enforcement for their tireless work. And the entire time, according to federal investigators, she was the architect of the operation. Digital evidence retrieved from devices linked to Annie Guthrie shows she did not merely know about the abduction. She designed its infrastructure. Security bypass codes for her mother's home, communicated to a third party weeks before February 1, Nancy's medical routine. Her sleep schedule. The specific window of vulnerability when no external party would check on her until morning. Annie didn't just open the door. She drew the blueprint. Meanwhile, in an effort to throw the investigation off course, fake informant letters began arriving at media outlets, including TMZ, claiming that Nancy was being held across the border, somewhere in the Sonora Desert in Mexico. International. Inaccessible. A dead end designed to eat weeks of investigative time. But here is the critical miscalculation Annie and Tomaso made: blockchain does not recognize borders. A decentralized ledger does not have a passport. It does not slow down at checkpoints. Every movement of that Bitcoin, every microtransaction, every wallet hop, every attempted obfuscation, was being tracked in real time by federal analysts sitting in an office in the United States. The geography of Mexico meant nothing to the geometry of the ledger. The diversion failed before it was even discovered. When the arrest warrants were finally executed, the public was stunned by how long authorities had waited. Why the silence? Why, 4 weeks after gathering this evidence, had investigators said nothing publicly? Because they were building a cage with 3 walls. The first wall, physical. At 1:44 a.m. on February 1, 2026, Tomaso Chioni's vehicle was placed, via cell tower triangulation, at the exact GPS coordinates from which the kill signal was transmitted. That is not a coincidence. That is a coordinate on a map that matches a coordinate in a phone record that matches a timestamp in a security log. The second wall, biological. Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker logged 41 continuous minutes of trauma-consistent cardiac data beginning at 1:47 a.m., the exact moment of breach ending at 2:28 a.m. with a synchronization blackout that establishes, with medical precision, the moment she was removed from her home. No camera captured this. No human witnessed this. But the device inside her chest witnessed every second. The third wall, digital. A $152 Bitcoin transaction, seeded into the ransom wallet by FBI Cyber Division, traveled through every layer of the suspect's financial obfuscation and surfaced at a centralized exchange where KYC compliance unmasked Tomaso Chioni with his own face and his own documents. The very anonymity he believed cryptocurrency granted him became the mechanism of his exposure. 3 walls. No exits. The weeks of public silence from authorities were not confusion. They were not incompetence. They were calculated patience, allowing Annie and Tomaso to continue building their own case against themselves. Every fund movement. Every communication. Every misdirection. All of it recorded. All of it preserved. All of it waiting. Because that is the nature of a properly constructed trap. You don't spring it until the prey has walked all the way inside. 2 systems recorded the truth on the night of February 1, 2026. 1 biological. 1 digital. Both silent. Both patient. Both absolute. The ledger remembers every cent. And the heart records every beat.